You are listening to the Standards Desk of News from The Standard Show, the podcast that brings you the stories behind the standards with Matthew Childs and Cindy Parakill.
Hey, Cindy Parakill.
Hey, Matthew Childs.
Well, shall we have the Standards Desk of News?
Let's do it.
Yes, this is the Standards Desk of News. News about standards and standards in the news. And this time we are covering stories from June 2024.
And we start with combating plastic pollution.
Yes, ISO has published a new policy brief, combating plastic pollution with international standards, to support national standards bodies in their advocacy efforts with policymakers and regulators. It offers practical examples and insights into how international standards can guide effective policy design and implementation to combat plastic pollution.
The policy brief offers a global perspective on the importance of addressing plastic pollution as a key policy issue and outlines how governments are tackling this challenge at the national, regional, and international levels. It highlights key international standards that can support policy responses related to things like recycling, waste management, eco-labeling, and many others. And it provides real-life examples of how standards have been incorporated successfully into national policies.
The policy brief was published in line with efforts led by the United Nations Environment Programme, or UNEP, to develop an internationally legally binding instrument on plastic pollution. Check out the show notes for more information. Now, sticking with ISO, new standards for the circular economy.
Yes, ISO has recently published 3 new standards on the circular economy. The idea behind the circular economy is that it reduces the need for resources extracted from nature because it ensures that products are reused as many times as possible. Resources and energy no longer go to waste as the unwanted byproducts from one economic process are fed back into another in a never-ending flow. The first of these new standards is ISO 59004. It's about the fundamental principles organizations must follow to embrace circularity. The second is ISO 59010. This is detailed guidance on formulating circularity strategies. And lastly, there is ISO 59020. This standard includes both requirements and guidance to help organizations assess their circularity performance.
And do check out on the feed the episode we did with circular computing, all about the remanufacturing of laptops.
Yes, highly recommended. Now, the 2024 Net Zero Barometer Report.
BSI has published its 4th annual Net Zero Barometer. In June 2019, the UK government enacted legislation to set a net zero emissions target by 2050, a global first. The Net Zero Barometer survey asks 1,000 senior decision makers from a spread of UK businesses about their understanding of and efforts towards achieving this target. This year's survey found that more businesses today believe they're capable of achieving net zero by 2050 than when BSI began the surveys, 73% compared with 68% back in 2021. More businesses today are also measuring their emissions. 59% of today's businesses measure Scope 3 emissions in full or in part, almost double the 27% of businesses monitoring these in 2021. Yet, whilst around 3/4 of UK businesses reported they are confident about their ability and likelihood of achieving net zero by 2050, only 1 in 3 have set themselves the target to achieve it. Definitely more work to do. And finally, World Accreditation Day.
Yes, World Accreditation Day took place on 9th of June. The terms accreditation and certification are often used interchangeably. Though they are closely related, they are different. Certification is an audit of whether an organization, product, or individual conforms to the criteria laid out in a recognized standard, such as ISO 9001 for quality management systems. Accreditation is a rung further up the ladder, performing an oversight role that underpins the quality, impartiality, and competence of the certification process. Or to put it another way, accreditation is certifying the certifiers. World Accreditation Day is a global initiative established by the International Accreditation Forum and the International Laboratory Accreditation Cooperation, and is all about raising awareness about the importance of accreditation. Belated Happy World Accreditation Day, Matthew Childs.
Thank you very much, and the same to you. Now, do you know what the 9th of June means to me, Cindy?
Go on.
Well, the 9th of June, it's a date that whenever it comes around, I'm reminded of something. So for those of us of a certain age who grew up in England and did O-levels, these are what's called ordinary examinations that you do when you're 16 years old. Well, the 9th of June was the date of my maths O-level. And I always remember it every year. Don't ask me what the dates of my other exams were, but the 9th of June is all about my maths O-level. How about that?
Wow, nice. A good memory or a bad memory?
I would say in between, I'd say. Okay. Now, let's move on quickly. Now, before I get too misty-eyed over maths exams, a reminder that you can find links to some of the stories we have featured today in the show notes. The show notes are also where you can find details of our social media and all the other ways to get in touch with us here on The Standard Show, including our newest thing, our LinkedIn newsletter.
Yes, sign up now.
Yes, do. Well, thank you, Cindy Parakill.
Thank you, Matthew Childs.
For June 2024, that's the Standard's Desk of News.
You have been listening to The Standard's Desk of News from The Standard Show, the podcast that brings you the stories behind the standards.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.